What do you think is the biggest problem for most entrepreneurs? Funding the business? Nope. Patent protection? No, patent protection isn't the most stressful problem for entrepreneurs either. Maybe you said technology. No, that's a nice try, but it's not technology either. You give up? It's people. People are the biggest problem for most entrepreneurs. Over and over again, I hear entrepreneurs complain to me that issues with their employees and management team consume more of their time and more of their energy than anything else they deal with. Okay, but really, you shouldn't be too surprised by that, right? I mean, people issues have always caused problems for leaders. Dealing with people is a very complex part of being a leader no matter what the situation. And yet, people issues often sneak up on entrepreneurs. Now, why is that? Well, perhaps the biggest reason is that people issues aren't given much thought during the early days of a startup. After all, as an entrepreneur, you might just be trying to figure out things as they happen. It's kind of like Indiana Jones said, "I'm making this up as I go." And like Indiana Jones, the startup team may be running operations by the seat of their pants too. And this makes sense. The company hasn't grown up yet, so there's chaos all around them. That's why the workplace inside the company has a very informal feel to it. In fact, it often feels like an adventure working for a small company. It's like the company is a band of pirates taking on the bigger, more established companies. Well, that environment is fine when the company is small. But if sales go up and more employees start to get hired, the workplace starts to change. It's not the same place anymore. Some of the new hires may feel like strangers to the established crew. They may not feel like they fit in anymore. Or they may feel like they're treated differently than the early hires. When this happens, it doesn't take long for tensions to start mounting inside the company. Focus starts to go away from the customer as employees spend their time maneuvering against each other. Things get more complex and a downward spiral starts to happen inside the company. You see, internal office conflict leads to less attention being given to the customer. And to make it worse, unfocused employees don't perform their task as well. So we start to see quality slip. Then, slipping quality leads to products that have to be reworked. Or even worse, faulty products actually get shipped to the customer. Leadership has to start spending more of its time putting out fires, and it devotes less time on strategic issues like marketing and innovation. Blame starts to get spread all around and cliques start to form inside the company. In fact, it sort of starts looking like an episode of Survivor. Now you're spending sleepless nights thinking about how to fix those people problems. Now, does it have to be this way? Fortunately, the answer is no. There's a whole field of management devoted to these issues. It's called human resources, or we can call it HR for short. But most entrepreneurs are pretty clueless when it comes to HR. They might be comfortable with making the product, and they might be comfortable working with customers, but they take working with employees for granted. Heck, it's almost to be expected given that we call this area human resources. Many entrepreneurs look at human resources as just another cost of doing business. Think about some other company resources: cash for operations, machines for building products, a building. So you might be thinking, hey, sales are up, and I'll just get some people and pop them into the right spots like I did when I bought that truck for my new sales region. If it were only that easy. But unfortunately, it's not, because human resources are much different than other resources the company has, and they need to be treated differently. People have feelings. They have expectations. And if they have ideas and experiences of their own, then you can expect that no people are going to be the same. And yet, when the time comes to hire new employees, people often act as if they are the same. They might post a job opening requiring someone with certain credentials. They do a quick interview, and if it all goes well and the qualifications match, boom, the person is hired. It's even more haphazard when a group of new employees is hired to meet a batch of new orders. You might be tempted to hire people as quick as you can in situations like that. While this stopgap approach might make sense in the short term, it often leads to a big problem because without good HR practices, the odds of having people issues has just gone way up. And now, instead of having one troubled employee, you might have a good number of bad ones spread all through the company. You see, it doesn't take long for discontent to start spreading through the company like a wildfire. And it's not that these people are inherently bad. Even the best of people can get bad attitudes if they don't like the situation they're in. That's where HR comes in. It provides practices and policies to help you recruit, train, and retain your workforce. That's what we're going to turn to now. And for the rest of this lecture, we'll cover each of these areas in more depth. And with awareness of the importance of HR and a human resource strategy plan in place, you can prevent many of the people issues that lead to disasters for a lot of other companies. So, let's take recruiting first. Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great, said, "Leaders of companies that go from good to great start not with where, but with who. They start by getting the right people on the bus, and the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. And they stick with that discipline. First the people, then the direction, no matter how dire the circumstances." But as I mentioned, many entrepreneurs put all their thought on where they're going, and they think about who's going with them. But much of the reason for this is that they don't know how to recruit properly. But recruiting can be pretty tough. So, let's see if we can do better. The first important step is recognizing what your company needs. Now, this is a tricky balancing act because you want to hire people who fit the culture, but you also want to make sure they're a little bit different from what you currently have. You see, you don't want new hires to rock the boat, but you also want them to bring new perspectives and skills to the company. So, let me give you a tip on how to find the right people. Think about the gaps that you currently have inside the company and ask yourself, what areas could you really use help in? Often, it's a lot easier and faster to hire someone who already has those skills than it is to develop it yourself. But once you recognize what you need help with, the perfect hire is not going to just fly out of the sky like Mary Poppins did. No, you have to go and make the perfect hire aware of you. They need to know that you exist and that they should come work for you. So, how do you do this? Well, you start by writing out a profile of what that ideal job hire would look like. We call that a job description. Think about what skills the new hire should bring and what type of job experience would be useful in helping out your company. Then, take a look at some of the other job postings from other companies and use that format to write yours. This is another example of a skill that we need to add to our toolkit. So let's do that. Write job descriptions for the positions you'll need. Just going through this exercise will help you see what skills you need to get from other people. It'll make the roles and responsibilities of your business more concrete, even if you're ultimately going to do all these jobs yourself. See, I would encourage you to do this exercise in the early stages of building your business. Okay, now that you know what you're looking for and you have a job description of what you need, you'll want those great recruits to come knocking on your door. Well, they're not going to knock if they don't know where the door is. How can we get them to know your address? Well, there's some common ways this is done. You can post the job opening on local hiring websites or even on national websites, or you can put it in the classified section of your local newspaper and your industry's trade magazines. And sometimes these approaches work and you get some pretty good applicants. But perhaps the best way to find the ideal job candidate is through networking. Go to trusted colleagues in your professional network and ask if they know of someone who might fit your needs. Ask your current employees if they know of someone that they could refer you to. If you're attending community or professional organizational meetings, tell people that you're hiring and ask if they can help you find great candidates. You see, you don't have to do this alone. Okay, once you get some good applicants, you'll want to interview them. This is very important. Don't just take their resume at face value and make a hire without talking with the candidate first. You want to make sure that they're a really good fit. Entrepreneurs who build great companies take great care in this process. They want to know that the applicant not only has the right skills, but also has the right demeanor and has consistent values to fit inside the company. Because what works at one company may not work at another, even in the same industry. One interesting and fun way of seeing if the employee will provide you with the talent your company needs is to give them hypothetical situations, just like they'll face in the job. So ask them what they do in certain situations. Now, while this may seem stressful to some candidates, the better candidates will often thrive on that challenge. In fact, they may light up when they get a chance to show off their abilities and their way of thinking. And that's a good indicator of who you want to hire. But remember, the interview process doesn't have to be like the Inquisition. At many companies, the hiring process is often just plain ugly. No, you should focus on providing a positive experience to those candidates. Think about how you'd like to be treated if you were interviewing. This is important because you have to remember that the best talent is usually in high demand. And being in high demand means that they have many options. And as a result, they're going to be less tolerant of being treated poorly during that hiring process. Now, if you're interested in a candidate, please make sure you follow through on timelines that you gave them. Follow up with calls and emails to let the candidate know where they actually stand in the hiring process. And if the candidate met with other employees, it's also a nice touch if they send a positive email to the applicant as well. You see, you really want to make a good impression on your applicants. You want the best to come work for you. Now, if the interview goes well and it seems you've gotten a good candidate, the hiring process doesn't stop there. Now, it's a good idea to do a background check on that applicant. Talk to people who might know the applicant. In fact, call the applicant's references and try to see if what the applicant shared with you in that interview matches what the references told you. And most importantly, find out what his or her past employer said about them. While you're betting on the potential of the applicant to do good work for you, there's never a guarantee that it's actually going to happen. So, the best advice I've gotten from HR experts is that if you want to know whether someone will make a good employee for you, learn how they were at their previous jobs. The common words of advice on this matter is the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Now, that saying doesn't mean that people can't change, because maybe there were things about the past job that just kind of hindered the person's performance. In fact, maybe it just wasn't a good fit. But more than likely, you can expect a person to go about their new job in much the same way they did their past job. So do that background. So, what are you looking for as far as indications of work effort, professionalism, and trustworthiness? You don't want to hire someone that has been undercutting others or been disruptive at past jobs. Here's a piece of advice I got from one of my mentors. It's okay to bring people onto your team who have made honest mistakes, as long as they can explain how they learned from those mistakes and how they use those lessons to make themselves better. But if someone has made decisions or done things that lack integrity, you want to avoid hiring dishonest people. Let me tell you, no matter who someone is, you'll regret hiring someone if they're a troublemaker. Drama kings and drama queens will ruin the business. You see, the bottom line here is, just like any big decision, you have to do your due diligence. Be careful who you hire. Look for the red flags and look for little things that might reveal weak character. But also know that the better candidates are also doing their due diligence on you. Almost all candidates will test the validity of what you've told them by visiting your website. If the message they get there differs from what they've heard from you, you're going to lose them in an instant. Make sure your website is up to date and consistent with the express values and mission that you put on it. Now, let's say you've done your due diligence, and let's also say you had a positive series of interviews with the candidate. Everything went great, and you decide that you want to hire the person. Do you make the offer and then move on to other matters in the company? No, because another often overlooked aspect of the HR process is the orientation stage of the hiring process. You need to take the time to properly introduce new employees to the company. The early days of employment are crucial for setting the tone of what it will be like for the new hire to work for you. Starting a new job can be exciting, but it can also be pretty stressful. The new employee wants to do a good job, but they need help knowing how to do that. So as part of the orientation process, emphasize the importance of their role inside your company. Let them know how their role fits into the greater picture of what the company is trying to accomplish. And when new hires understand the importance of what they're doing for the company, they're going to feel more connected. Now, that's really important because people perform better when they understand why they should be working hard. Now, once again, I think of Walt Disney World when I think of a great example of how to introduce new employees to your business. Disney employees are called cast members, and every cast member will start with the same introduction to the company. This introductory program is called Traditions. And Traditions covers the past, present, and future of the Walt Disney Company. You see, Disney wants employees to know where the company comes from and why it's so special. Now, I love this practice because every company has an origin story. In fact, I like it so much that I think I'm going to add it to your toolkit. So let's do that. Add to your toolkit, write your business creation story. Here's why. Businesses were started by people who took risk, and that always makes for a good story. And good stories get our attention. In fact, good stories inspire us. And that's what you want in your company, inspired employees. You want them to connect with your company's legacy. And when you write your story, make it compelling. Then tell new hires why that original startup risk was taken and explain to them what your company provides the world and why it's so important to people. Craft a story you can tell over and over again. And like all good things, it's going to get better with age. And help them understand the importance of their work. If you don't do this, they may just feel like they're there for a paycheck. And when this happens, the culture inside the company weakens. And you don't want this to happen to you. You see, the culture inside your company will determine how your employees do their jobs, and it's going to determine how they treat your customers. Too many entrepreneurs take this aspect of the hiring process for granted. Once you've explained why they're at the company, provide them with the whats and the hows of the job. Educate them on the different aspects of the job and how to do that job well. Provide them with the metrics that their performance will be measured by, and let them know what to monitor to gauge how they're doing on the job. This can be done by providing them with job descriptions, policy manuals, safety manuals, and operating standards. Many entrepreneurs don't take the time to think through these details of a position, but it's better to start doing this sooner rather than later in a company's growth. And it helps a company grow up faster into a high-performing and mature company. Professionalism inside a company comes from leadership's example. If the owner and management don't show the employees that they care about the details of what's entailed in the job, then why would the employees care about it either? Okay, let's continue with the Disney example. Disney's employees are called cast members. Cast members go through extensive training to be sure that they give every guest world-class service. For example, new skippers on the Jungle Cruise ride have to master their performance with cast members before they're ever allowed to take guests on that ride. So, there's an extensive training program where they have to demonstrate their abilities before getting in front of a guest. They call this training period earning their ears, under the watchful eyes of cast members. The training program is so effective that cast members aren't out of training long before they're able to train new people themselves. Now, an employee who's doing well on the job will probably want to know how they'll get rewarded for doing good work. And that's where compensation and incentives come into play. You can structure compensation and incentives that work best for your company. Without effective compensation management, employees are going to become frustrated. You need to find a way to link pay with performance in order to incentivize employees to focus on what matters for themselves and the company. But incentives can take many different forms. For example, you can provide new hires with stock options, and you might give them equity plans. This is very common in technology startups where small revenues and limited cash flow make the high salaries very hard to pay. But letting new hires bet on the future success of the startup is not only enticing, it can also be kind of exciting. Because getting in on the ground floor can lead to a big payoff if the company makes it big. But more importantly, the big payday in the future can motivate your employees to actually make it happen. After all, we've seen many frontline employees become multimillionaires by joining companies such as Microsoft and Facebook in the early days of those companies' existence. Okay, other compensation tools that can be motivating are profit-sharing plans, pay raises, and bonuses for meeting performance targets. What all these tools have in common is that they're tied to moving the company forward. Employees are not getting paid just for showing up. And if the company does well, the employees get rewarded for making that happen. That creates a high-performance work environment, and that's not only good for the bottom line, it's also very satisfying for the employees to be part of a winning team. Remember, companies are always competing for good talent. If you don't treat your high performers well, someone else will. No matter what the state of the economy is, the best performers in companies always have opportunities. You see, the employment rate is a statistic that doesn't apply to your most talented and hardworking people. You have to work as hard for them as they do for you. So, if your company is doing well, share the wealth. Because if you don't, the top performers will leave and they're going to make somebody else more successful. Now, there are other ways that you can reward your employees beyond money and equity. Non-monetary options such as time off, flex time, autonomy, group lunches, gym memberships, and other special employee benefits can be great motivators as well. Many companies are famous for their unique rewards. Let's look at Patagonia. Patagonia is an outdoor clothing company headquartered on the Pacific Ocean in Ventura, California. And most of the employees are outdoors people. When the waves are up, company policy encourages the employees to go surfing. Patagonia recognizes that its brand is about the outdoors and about adventure. And being true and authentic to their brand and their company mission, it helps them recruit and retain those serious outdoor types. And these employees love the company, and in fact, it shows in their work. This unique work environment has helped it gain loyalty from its customers as well. Because, you see, surfers and rock climbers want to support a company that employs their own kind. They believe in the Patagonia brand. As you can see, there are many ways that you can put together policies, procedures, and compensation packages for employees. And when you get down to it, human resources is an important tool for designing the type of company that you want to build. You have to think about who you want in your company, how you're going to attract them to the company, and how to get them to work hard for you over the many years ahead. And really what this boils down to is creating a workplace that generates high job satisfaction and employee motivation. But great workplaces with satisfied and motivated employees are actually pretty rare in the world. Consider these facts. 46% of new hires quit within the first year of employment. 85% of employees experience sharp morale decline after their first 6 months on the job. 30% of managers say motivating employees is their toughest challenge. And if you're thinking about opening a store, I want you to consider this. 67% of retail hourly employees will leave for another place each year. Okay, so why does this happen? Well, there are a lot of reasons. High on the list is how you treat the employees in front of others. Okay, if you publicly criticize employees, that's a sure way to have them turn against you. Remember, always correct employees in private. Now, on the other hand, if an employee is doing well, by all means, give them public praise. Okay, another demotivator for employees is when you don't follow up on promises. Owners of businesses can often get busy and distracted, but if you make an agreement with an employee, make sure you adhere to it. After all, you'd want the same from them. Also, if you're giving the employee performance targets, deadline, or goals to reach, make sure they're achievable. It's okay to challenge the employee to stretch themselves and get out of their comfort zone. But don't make it impossible either. And if you're going to challenge the employee to hit a big goal, provide them with the support and resources that they need to get that job done. If you feel you need to reprimand an employee, make sure you explain why you're reprimanding them. Not explaining yourself leads to confusion and frustration. However, if you make the meeting an opportunity to help that employee grow from the experience, it can be seen as a positive event in the long run. And perhaps the biggest source of demotivation is micromanagement. Very few people like to feel like their boss is breathing down their neck. Remember, you hired these people for a reason. Let them do their job. And this becomes especially important when a company gets larger. As a company grows, it's likely that there will be middle managers between the owner and the employees. Okay, micromanagement can cause problems for everyone, including the owner. If the owner gives the frontline employee a different set of directions than the middle manager gave them, tensions will quickly rise. The employee will not know which person to listen to, the middle manager will feel disrespected, and the owner will create a chaotic environment to oversee. And when this happens, no one's going to win. It's very important that if an owner builds a chain of command, that they respect it too. If the owner doesn't respect the chain of command, no one else will either. Now, obviously, the owner wants to make sure the work is getting done very well inside the company. But this can be accomplished through monitoring the numbers that show whether the work is actually getting done. If the work doesn't appear to be getting done, the owner can remove underperforming managers and then hire better ones to take the place of those underperforming managers. Now, while firing someone is never easy, it's better to make that hard call than becoming a micromanager who doesn't trust the leadership of his or her leadership team. And your employees may even thank you for making that tough call. You see, good performers want to work with other good performers. Consider these stats. 33% of managers and 43% of staff think their companies don't deal well with underperformers. 87% of employees say that working with a low performer has made them want to change jobs. And 93% of employees say that being around unproductive people actually decreases their productivity. Now, these are sobering stats, but there's one tool that can be very helpful in preventing this predicament, and that's the performance review. The performance review is one of the best weapons that you have against poor work and demotivation. Every manager and an employee should receive a performance review at least once a year, but more frequently is even better. When you do a performance review, there are a few things that you can do to make it go well. Be sure you match the review to the mission of the company. So, you want to explain how the employee's work contributed or took away from that mission. And prepare ahead of time for the review by having specific and documented points for discussing in the meeting. Keep the focus on their work rather than on the person or your relationship with that person. The performance review is not the time to address interpersonal dynamics. Save that for times where you can serve more as a coach or a mentor to that employee. Also, avoid one-sided reviews. Let the employee give their thoughts on their performance, give them some time as well, and let the meeting serve as a way for you to learn how you can make the workplace a better place for all your employees. What do they think is keeping them from getting their jobs done well? What would help them do their jobs even better? And use the meeting to get to know them better. What motivates and excites them? How can you design their work in a way to bring out the enthusiasm? And finally, once you've discussed their past performance, discuss what goals would be good for them to pursue over the next work cycle. Okay, in today's lecture, we looked at human resource practices. And I can't emphasize enough that this is one of the most important issues you'll ever address as an entrepreneur. Over and over again, I hear from entrepreneurs who tell me that they spend more time dealing with employee issues than anything else in the business. Consider this stat. In the average company, only 59% of a manager's time adds value to the company, but 41% of that time is spent dealing with employee issues. Now, it doesn't have to be this way if you follow the tips in this lecture. Take the time in the early stages of the business to think about how you'll find and keep the best employees. Create a workplace where employees know what is expected of them. Provide the tools and support to get their work done, and you need to know what motivates and what demotivates them. I want you to think about this every day, because if you do, you're well on your way to building a truly great company.